This is the first episode of Classroom Hacks.
Classroom Hacks. Ask for it by name.
And we're going to try to figure out what the tagline is at some point. We've tossed around several ideas like seriously taking teaching not too seriously.
Teaching, living, laughing.
Yeah, those are a couple. And we're trying to figure out what really rolls off the tongue the best.
Yeah, and it's memorable. It makes it stick. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to produce copyright issues or not copyright, but I'm wearing a shirt right now from Precision Plumbing. My brother-in-law is a manager of Precision Plumbing, and their tagline is, it's stitched in the back of the shirt, "Is today soon enough?"
Oh, wow.
And that's actually trademarked.
Is that actually what their tagline is? Is today soon enough? That's yeah, there you go. Well,
it's catchy.
Our first endorsement to our first advertisement.
This podcast brought to you by Precision Plumbing. Can you make a toilet sound?
I think so. I think I can add in a toilet sound. This is essentially where it's going anyway, down there. But it's our first episode. You probably heard the opening monologue, and here we are going to address, as any instructor usually does on the first day of class, their icebreaker. But before we get into the topic of icebreaker, something to kind of break down how this podcast will work, weekly basis maybe every 2 weeks, I don't know. We got to figure that out. But we will be kind of filming, or recording, I should say, a couple episodes here so we can have some available. But we take a topic and we tend to go essentially long form on it. So first topic might be icebreakers. Second topic might be students, assignments. Pedagogy is a big one, so probably you might have to break that one up a little bit.
You know, it's something we have not done yet. We have not even introduced ourselves.
That is true, and right now on the outline, that's where I am at part 4.
Oh, sorry. See, how come I'm not aware of your outline? As your partner in crime, I should know the outline.
It is. I like to keep you in the dark about that stuff. Like my students, I don't let them know. I've had students ask me, "What are we doing today?" And I'll tell them, "I haven't decided yet."
Yeah, that's why my syllabus I pass out is 4 blank pages. It's very, very zen.
It is, and because essentially that's what are they here for if not to learn? And so, who are we? A couple of educators, instructors, jokers. But one thing that we've always discussed is that there's 2 things that instructors like to do. Educators like to teach, and they like to complain. And not to say that we're going to be complaining or teaching this whole time, but we wanted to give a relatable platform that many instructors, I feel, vent about on a daily basis, which is their job that they love and that they vent about a lot.
And this will be common to human experience because everyone on their jobs, we all have times where we have things we're unhappy about.
Yeah, exactly.
And we will complain or, worst case scenario, whine about it.
Exactly. So I'm Eric Tan, by the way, and my partner in crime for this endeavor is
Peter Canetis.
You might have seen him on The Tonight Show a couple of decades ago with Johnny Carson, right?
Yeah.
When you were an up-and-comer.
That's true. I was on there because for a segment of a 6-year-old boy who can swim for 2 hours without getting his hair wet, and it was a Guinness Book of World Records.
Well, that was incredible. And later to be broken a couple of years later by an actual 6-year-old boy who was able to do that without getting his hair wet.
Yeah, that was, records are made to be broken. So
Pedro, why teaching? When and why did you get into the game?
Okay, so we'll go back. I'll answer it first, but then you answer the same question. Okay.
I'm going to come back.
The long story short is this. Before acting, I was in theater. I was pursuing the dream in California. First here in Chicago doing theater, but then moved out to Los Angeles to see if I can make a go of it out there. And long story short, after acting for numerous years, I started to fall in love with teaching. Because my survival job ended up being, I was a substitute teacher in Los Angeles public high schools. Mm-hmm. And as we could imagine, there's overlapping skills and features of both. And the bottom line is this. You can inspire people as a performer. You can also inspire people as a teacher. And so the tagline, I think, that goes beyond all the teaching I do, no matter what it's a philosophy class or a religion class, is I want to inspire my students with a hunger for truth. which doesn't mean I sit there and give them my views, but I want them to be looking for, what's true about this issue. And we're not going to all agree about that in class, but to become better thinkers, to become, searching for that which is true, because in the long run, in my view, I think that the better we get at doing that, the better we get at making wise choices. Mm-hmm. And then from that, being able to find a bit more happiness in this tough life.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I would say that's ultimately the goal, is that pursuit of happiness, mm-hmm. Critical thought. And before we go any further, I'll say that I am an English instructor. Peter here is philosophy and religion. So both kind of in that liberal arts sort of category. Mm-hmm. So to kind of give the audience a bit of a scope of exactly where we come from and how our perspective is shaped.
And we're both here at the College of DuPage.
We are, and
some other places.
Right now, we are in a perfectly symmetrical all-glass room where the light can shine in on us from all sides, and so we're essentially glowing right now. But literally, we're in a classroom surrounded by desks and a podium.
And there's no one else in here. It's the summer right now.
It is, and so that's just to give you a little bit of the ambiance or the milieu, if you'll say. And so for me, I've been doing teaching now. Is that right? Doing teaching? Is that what we do?
Teachers teach. Yeah.
Yeah, teachers teach. I've been in the teaching game since 2011. I started over at Joliet Junior College, and I was essentially first a writing center tutor. And eventually I worked my way up into becoming an adjunct, and then I got into a position over here at College of DuPage. And, the journey really started when I was in college, and I had certain instructors who I sat in on classes, and to be perfectly honest, they were bland, they were blasé. I didn't really relate to what they were saying. And then I had other instructors who were completely engaging, and I saw the way that they communicated with their students, and I saw the way that they really did get students to think differently. And so I told myself that if I ever become a teacher, an educator, that I would take the things that I've enjoyed from the teachers that I've liked and apply a bit of my own spin and creativity into all of that. And so that's why, in a long story short, we're making a podcast right now, because I think that a lot of teachers have similar stories that they go through, that they have similar trials and perils and plights that they deal with on a daily basis that we often talk about, but sometimes we do get wrapped up in the seriousness of our job, and when it comes to wondering what's the best teaching practices, the best methods, but also at the same time just wanting to be more relaxed about it, because it's very easy to get tense and terse in some of these situations, during the middle of the semester when things are dragging and the hill is very steep at that point. And so hopefully this podcast can shed some enlightenment, can shed some comedy, some levity to your situation, because that's one thing that we want to do to try to separate ourselves, is we want to give sort of our own insight. We're not here to tell you that this is the be-all, end-all of teaching podcasts.
Right. It's not the best way or the only way necessarily.
If you want to hear that, we have another podcast for it. It's called the Be-all, End-all of Teaching Podcast.
Yeah, our instruction and advice is flawless and perfect.
Exactly.
Because we never make mistakes. That's why we're doing this podcast.
That's why we became teachers, because we want to show people that we know it all and they need to listen or else.
What's funny about that, Eric and I always joke. We always joke around how we're very excellent thieves. We will read something about teaching, an article or a book, or talk to coworkers, and there's a lot of really wonderful teachers around us, so we steal good ideas from them. So what we're 99.9% of what we're going to say in terms of advice or wisdom, we got from somebody else. So we stand on the shoulders of the giants who have come before us.
Absolutely. And, and we make them wear a long overcoat, so it makes it just seem like we're this really tall person when we're really sitting on the shoulders of an even taller person.
Yeah, that's, if you can have a visual of that mentally, it's the comedic payoff is there.
And so, like I said, we are trying to add a little bit of levity to, and also educational sort of podcast. And we're going to get back to the idea of, speaking of being thieves, icebreakers in a moment when we come back from our first commercial.
Wait, what's the connection between thieves and icebreakers?
You know, that we stolen some of the good introductory methods to.
Oh, okay.
To,
Okay, I just pictured a guy wearing a ski mask carrying a block of ice out of a store or something. I didn't.
Well, that's what we're doing after this.
I gotcha. Okay, I'm a little slow sometimes.
So anyway, like I said, the levity comes from these different sort of tangents that we're going to try to run on the show to separate ourselves, like I said. So you might hear a couple of commercials in these breaks, and just so you know, these aren't necessarily real advertisements, unlike Precision Plumbing Services, which tagline is.
Yeah, which we'll probably cut out in the editing.
Right. But for our first commercial, which is for the Automated Adjunct Response System. So we'll be back in a moment. And we're back. So icebreakers. It's the first day of class. You get in, and you want to set the tone. You want to make sure that you are respected, that students will listen to you, and they are in fear of their lives. What do you do to set the tone for the class?
Well, with that intro, the way you laid that out, actually what I think we would agree on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is right away I want them to know, as cliche and corny as this sounds, that it's not my class, it's not their class, it's our class. Mm-hmm. So from the beginning, I have them talking. I don't start off by reading the syllabus, and I know some teachers do, and that's fine. I'm not saying that. Again, there's many ways to skin the cat, as they say, as the old saying goes. But I'll have them, here's an example. What I did this past semester. So I told them, this class, it's not going to be just me talking the whole time. We need to be engaged. We need to be, learning comes from doing. So we need to be active in here. And so I want to set that tone from the very beginning. So I had them write down something that makes them laugh really hard. I said, think about, it could be a TV show, it could be a film, it could be your Uncle Eddie, whatever it is, something that makes you laugh really hard. Because I said, in here, we're going to think, we're going to read, we're going to write, we're going to talk. I said, but we're also going to laugh. Mm-hmm. So I want the class to bond. I want to form a sense of community from day one. And so they do a 1-minute paper on what makes them laugh. They talk in groups about it, and then we share it all together. And usually people either start laughing or they'll say, oh, I watched that show, or I know that comedy sketch. Yeah, that's funny. So that's one thing I do. How about you?
Now, to a side note here, why do you feel laughter and comedy is sort of a good placeholder to sort of tone setter in the beginning?
Yeah, good question. I think 2 reasons. One is comfort level. Mm-hmm. It forms a sense of comfort and trust with each other. Mm-hmm. And the second is related to the first. It's a form of bonding. If we can laugh, think of all the people that you laugh with, there's a connection there of some sort. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you have to be best friends, but if you laugh with someone, that does form an instant bond, connection, and trust. And I want to try and form that from day one so we can have that trust and bonding when we do work together in the classroom.
Absolutely, and I would say that, taking into consideration your student body, that if you're teaching freshmen, sophomores, sometimes we forget that a lot of these kids are still teenagers, that they're coming in, and oftentimes they're probably more nervous than we give them credit for. And so to sort of break that sort of tension initially, comedy, laughter is a good way just to kind of ease students into an environment or atmosphere where they can see that this isn't this really tense or really strict place where I'm not going to be able to be open about certain things. And the other thing is I've always felt that it's easier to go from comedy to seriousness later on in the semester. Whereas if you start off serious, I think it's harder to try to bring in a comedic element like somewhere down the line, because students will then say, this isn't normal, like what's going on here.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start off funny, or if you at least start off with a little bit of humor, you don't have to go out there and kill the first day you're out in class.
Yeah.
But if you at least show that the atmosphere is a bit more flexible and not as strict in terms of, being a very serious class, that it's easier to bend later on, that you can become serious, and they take that with more acceptance, that if you are serious to begin with and then try to be funny later on, it makes it a little more difficult.
What do you say to the people who, because I like what you're saying, but I know some of the people who are listening now are probably thinking, Eric, it should be the opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
We start off as, with some measure of, hey, I'm the authoritative figure. We set the tone so the students know that they can't blow off work, they can't just walk in whenever they please.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we set that, then we loosen the collar to show them, hey, okay, I am a human being. We can have a good time too. So some people approach it the opposite way. What would you tell those people who want to argue for that way instead of the way that you were just saying?
Well, I'd first want to tell them that put your hand down, you are absolutely wrong. Actually, no, I wouldn't tell them that, because that's our other podcast.
Yeah, tell them to
right.
get out of teaching.
Right.
And, there's a crossing guard. I became what's his name from Beverly Hills Cop?
Oh,
with a lemon
yeah.
twist,
Yeah.
Serge, or what was his name? I forgot his name. Whatever.
I would say to those instructors that, each of us are different. Each of us has a style. Each of us has an approach. And when we try to mimic someone else's approach, it's transparent. Students will see that. So, like I said, I don't expect anyone to go in there and be the stand-up comedian. Otherwise, you'd be in stand-up comedy. But you can try to strike a balance with what makes you comfortable, but what also makes the class comfortable. And I think you can establish a sort of authority figure where you do establish your rules and you set your guidelines, but then you can also establish your personality as well. And I think that's, at least has been my goal for my class, is that you set the rules, you clarify what those are early on, but then you also give them a glimmer of what to expect in terms of the atmosphere and what you will bring to the classroom in terms of your personality at the same time.
Yeah, I like what you just said in terms of adapting or making the method your own, or the strategy or the exercise, whatever you're doing in class, having it reflect the real you. Because the way you're going to do some things in class will be different than the way I do, just based on our personalities and all those things, our backgrounds. And even with our podcast, I like to think that we'll toss out ideas, not because we know more than other people, not because we're these, like you said, end-all, be-all experts, but we'll throw up a lot of ideas, and whatever sticks, if you find it helpful, useful, keep it. If not, toss it out. If you were in this room giving us ideas, we probably would find a lot of good ideas that we would steal from you.
Yeah.
So.
And we use the term steal loosely, just because we won't ever give you credit for it, just to clarify.
Yeah, we'll just tell the students that everything comes from us and that no footnotes allowed.
Yeah. And speaking of ideas, Peter brought his up earlier in terms of getting the classroom engaged. Obviously, if you go onto Google and you type in different icebreaker questions, there's a long list of great icebreaker questions to have. Actually, one of the lesson plans that I try to do on a day, especially for 1101 classes, is the personal writing statement. And so I look up different personal statements or schools or jobs where they have like really quirky sort of interview questions. Like Google might ask, how many cows are there in Canada? Or if you were on page 415 of your autobiography, what might it say?
Yeah, I like that. I like that one.
Or why are you here and not somewhere else? And so essentially, ultimately, there's no right or wrong answer with these. But as Peter said, the goal is to get students talking, get them engaged, and get them just to kind of get out of their comfort zone a little bit. And as time goes on, past day one, you'll figure out what makes them comfortable, what makes them uncomfortable, and you can get them to kind of bend and be flexible with that, because that's where they're really going to learn. There was also an instructor when we had our Writing on the Edge conference here at College of DuPage. Cheap plug for those of you who are interested. It comes in
It's
October.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not a cheap plug. You're creating an awareness.
Yes. It's cheap just because no one's getting paid to plug it. But there was an instructor. She was actually comes from an improv background, and one of her icebreakers is to actually have the class get up, stand up, and break up into groups.
Who's this?
So I wish, honestly, I wish I remembered her name.
Here?
No,
English
no,
teacher?
she teaches over at Malcolm X, I believe, in
Ah.
Chicago. But she was great. She was able to get the class to stand up and really come out of their shells in terms of her improv background. But again, that is her background. That's what she's good at. Can I say that every person is going to be able to engage a class that way? Absolutely not. But her personality mixed in with that a little bit of risk taking, I think really paid off for her. And that really did set the tone for the classroom. So something to sort of think about is, what are you interested in? How can you apply your personality to the icebreaker? And so that it's not necessarily uncomfortable for you or uncomfortable for the students, but a nice balance between the two things. So we're nearing the end of our first class here today on icebreakers. And so we're going to kind of put a bow into that. For the next topic, when we'll get into next time, we'll be looking at every instructor's favorite counterpart in students. And as I've always said, education would be great if it wasn't for grading and students. And so we're going to talk about that as
I
well.
think without those things, it would be the perfect job.
I would say so myself. I think just like people in medicine say, medicine would be great if it wasn't for patients. So we have that relatable that we should.
But now, are we
become
giving
doctors.
off the aroma that we don't like or love our students?
No, I would say don't like is such a specific.
Such a negative
Exactly.
word.
I
This
think
stuff.
hate works better.
Okay.
No. Students are the essence. They make or break the classroom. And so one thing we'll focus on is how classrooms can be different from night and day. You might have the same topic at 8 a.m. and they might love it. They might eat it up. And then your 10 o'clock class, absolutely like pulling teeth. So
Is it safe to say that our goal in these podcasts is to have what they call student-centered or learner-centered teaching?
yes, I would
Yeah.
I would say so. And that will probably be a topic we'll come back to in our next episode of Classroom Hacks. So once again, from my perspective, try not to take teaching too seriously.
I think it's a Paul Newman quote, actually. Take your work seriously, but yourself lightly.
Very good. I think that's a good note to end on.